MMA is a sport full of some of the baddest motherfuckers on the planet. Guys who are so tough and crazy, they are willing to put their bodies on the line for our entertainment. But in MMA, there are a rare few set of guys who sit above the rest, who can be viewed as the BMFs of the sport. The guys with the no-nonsense attitude who put it all on the line and take on the biggest and baddest challenges the sport has to offer, no matter if the odds are stacked against them. These are those guys who, as much as they love the money and the spoils of the wars they are in, they just as much love the war and all that comes with the battles they put on in the octagon. So let's take a look at them. This is the Fight franchise and the top 10 BMFs in MMA history. Before we start this list, the BMF is a reputation and not really quantifiable. Therefore, guys like John Jones, Khabib and Anderson Silva, who are BMFs in a way, I see these guys come under different categories, like the most dominant or scary or intimidating fighters. We are looking at those guys who have that bad motherfucker aura. So let's get started. Number 10. Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier, a fighter who has captured the hearts of the fans with his grit and determination over the last few years after his move from featherweight to lightweight. The Poirier that fought versus Conor McGregor the first time wouldn't have made this list, but over the last few years Poirier's rise to the top has been nothing short of extraordinary. His battles against the best fighters in the lightweight division have been legendary. Poirier's technical boxing, iron chin and never back down attitude have led him to victory against some top tier opponents. Ever since his loss in 2016 to Michael Johnson, Dustin Poirier has beat a who's who in the lightweight division, which is arguably the greatest division in MMA history. He beat Jim Miller in the fight of the night, submitted Anthony Pettis in the fight of the night. In 2018, he had two of the best fights of the year against Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje, stopping both of them. He beat Dan Hooker in a fight of the year contender. He beat Max Holloway for interim lightweight gold while Max was in his prime and featherweight champ. He beat Michael Chandler in a war at MSG, and he was the first person to KO Conor McGregor in MMA history. His only fault in his run has been losing for undisputed gold against Khabib and Oliveira. But for the countless wars, the legendary performances and his true heart and determination he has shown to turn his career around, Dustin Poirier is an absolute BMF. Number 9. Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal, a fighter known for his fearless attitude and explosive fighting style, Masvidal's rise to stardom has been nothing short of incredible. With his street fighting background and a no-nonsense approach, he has thrilled fans with his recent knockout power and versatility inside the cage. Masvidal is a true legend of MMA, and the first to hold the UFC's version of the BMF belt, beating Nate Diaz at UFC 244, putting a beat down on Stockton's finest. Masvidal went on a legendary run across multiple promotions, landing in the UFC, fighting in the lightweight and welterweight division. What made Masvidal so great was his craftiness and durability, being finished only once since 2009 in his iconic loss against Usman in their second fight. Masvidal's flying knee knockout against Ben Askren and his knockout victory over Darren Till are some of the most memorable moments in recent MMA history, and to have the fastest and one of the most iconic knockouts in MMA history is a proper BMF move. But what also made Masvidal so great, he had this calm, badass nature to him, but when it was time to fight, he was game, which is probably why he got the nickname Gamebred. And in his later career, to be compared to Scarface, a true BMF in the movie world, Gamebred is definitely a BMF of the MMA world. Number 8. Rafael dos Anjos. There are many fighters when you look at their resume who have fought the best of the best and absolute killers in MMA. Rafael dos Anjos arguably has the most stacked resume of fighters he has fought. RDA, known for his relentless pressure and well-rounded skill set, joined the UFC in 2008 and has been in the UFC now for 15 years, which sees him as the fighter with the most octagon time in UFC history at the time of writing this list. Dos Anjos has faced some of the toughest opponents in the lightweight division. He done amazing in the lightweight division, working himself all the way up to a world title fight versus Anthony Pettis, winning the world title in a legendary 5-round performance by the Brazilian. He would lose the title shortly after to Eddie Alvarez, which saw RDA move up to welterweight, going on a 3-fight win streak, competing for interim welterweight gold, coming up short in his attempt at a second belt. No matter the challenge or the opponent, RDA has been game pretty much his whole career, which has seen him fight the following list of people: Clay Guida, Donald Cerrone, Khabib, Benson Henderson, Nate Diaz, Anthony Pettis, Eddie Alvarez, Tony Ferguson, Neil Magny, Robbie Lawler, Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Kevin Lee, Leon Edwards, Paul Felder, and even taking on scary up-and-comer Rafael Fiziev. 7 undisputed champions. 2 interim champions are within the list of those names, and he was even a champ himself, putting on some great performances and fights. RDA has took no handouts and done it the hard way in MMA, fighting the best of the best, which definitely makes him a true BMF. Number 7. Robbie Lawler. The recently retired ruthless one is one bad motherfucker. Robbie Lawler throughout his career was the type of man who let his fighting do the talking. Being in the sport from 2001, he gave over 20 years to MMA and had a great career. This was all due to his killer mentality, which is what gets him on this list. Not backing down from a fight, he would take on all comers and put on some legendary fights, wars and performances in his career. His career would span across a few promotions, but it was his no-nonsense, badass attitude and performance in his second UFC run, which truly makes Robbie Lawler a BMF. He would come back to the UFC from Strikeforce and finish Josh Koscheck via KO, and would then stop Bobby Volker and then beat Rory McDonald by decision to earn a title shot, losing a close fight to Johnny Hendricks. Robbie didn't care and got back on the horse and would KO Jake Ellenberger and beat Matt Brown and earn a rematch versus Hendricks, beating him to become world champ. He would have two epic title defenses versus Rory McDonald and Matt Brown, which were legendary wars, and one of those wars ended up being the fight of the year. He has a legendary resume of names on his career and fought through adversity while having one of the most fan-friendly styles ever. A true warrior and BMF of MMA. Number 6. Donald Cerrone. The newly minted Hall of Famer Donald Cowboy Cerrone is a true BMF who has always been ready to step inside the cage and throw down with anyone. Being third with the all-time number of fights in the UFC as of recording this list, Cerrone has consistently taken on top-tier competition. Known for his exciting fighting style, versatility in striking and willingness to take risks, he has delivered numerous memorable performances. Cerrone's aggressive nature and love for the fight game have made him a fan favourite and a true legend of the sport. Cerrone went on a tear in MMA with countless legendary fights, performances, finishes and knockouts, and though he never secured that elusive undisputed world title, he did go on a brilliant 8-fight win streak on his way to the title bout, beating the likes of Barboza, Eddie Alvarez and Benson Henderson, and even securing 3 head kick KOs within this streak. He is currently tied in second with the most wins in the UFC, he is third with the most finishes with 16, and is first for securing the most knockdowns in UFC history. His fight style, his approach to MMA was just badass, and with the ranch called the BMF ranch, of course Donald Cowboy Cerrone deserves a spot on this list. Number 5. BJ Penn. BJ Penn is a true legend of the sport. Known for his exceptional skills and warrior spirit, a 2-division champion in the UFC is where Penn showcased his skills, his versatility and dominance. He was a fierce striker known for his wild striking and powerful ground game, earning him victories over some of the best of his era. But what makes BJ Penn such a BMF was his willingness to compete against the best of the best and test himself against the highest level of competition. This was showcased going to K1 to fight Lyoto Machida, who weighed 225 pounds, while BJ Penn weighed 190 pounds, 35 pounds smaller, and he only lost a decision to Machida. When he was in the UFC, he put it all on the line with his super exciting fight style, which earned him welterweight gold, beating and ending Matt Hughes' 13-fight win streak. He would come back from K1 to face the best in the world GSP, losing a close split decision, which was controversial with GSP's use of Vaseline on his body between the rounds. BJ Penn would compete for lightweight gold, becoming a force in that division and winning the belt against Joe Stevenson, where he became the second ever multi-divisional champion in UFC history. Legendary KOs, submissions, performances, taking on the best of the best with his amazing fight style, BJ Penn was the embodiment of a BMF. Number 4. The Diaz Brothers. A bit of a cop-out having both of them, but honestly they are pretty much so similar in every way. The Diaz Brothers have been iconic cult figures in MMA and have even gone mainstream due to Nate Diaz's surge in popularity. The older brother Nick Diaz set the way with his brash no-nonsense attitude and exciting fight style in the early UFC, but truly built his name in Strikeforce, going on a legendary streak, becoming their welterweight champ, while Nate Diaz became the winner of The Ultimate Fighter with his FU mentality and super fun and amazing fight style like his brother Nick. Both created huge fan bases and added so much flair to the sport. Even though Nick's second UFC run was nothing compared to his Strikeforce run, he was must-watch TV. All the while, on short notice, Nate Diaz would shock the world and be the first person to beat Conor McGregor in the UFC in one of the sport's greatest moments. They both have a list of who's who's on their resumes, fighting the best of the best and not giving a fuck while doing it. The Diaz brothers had cardio for days, both were durable as hell, and both from press conferences to Octagon, both brothers were BMFs. And for Nate Diaz to create the belt and bring the moniker to the forefront, of course he and his brother make the list. They are certified BMFs who changed the sport forever. Number 3. Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is a fighter known for his relentless aggression and explosive fighting style. Gaethje is a true warrior inside the cage, always pushing the pace and delivering thrilling performances. His striking power and iron chin have allowed him to engage in unforgettable brawls and against some of the best fighters in the lightweight division. Justin Gaethje would join the UFC with a lot of hype, being the World Series of Fighting lightweight champ, and he would be 17-0. His debut in the UFC set the tone for what would be his UFC career. He would face Michael Johnson in one of the fights of the year, winning in the second second round via KO. His next fight, he would get the first loss of his career in a war versus Eddie Alvarez, and then after losing another war and fight of the year versus the earlier mentioned Dustin Poirier. He would go on an amazing 4-fight win streak, winning every fight via KO, beating James Vick, Edson Barboza, Donald Cerrone and Tony Ferguson in one infamous matchup which ended the streak and mystique of El Kukui. He would lose in a brilliant 2-round fight against Khabib, and he would beat Michael Chandler at MSG in the fight of the year. He would lose to Charles Oliveira in one of the best 1-round fights ever and go to war in the fight of the night versus Rafael Fiziev. He is pure entertainment of the highest level, and his willingness to go to war and put on the best show every single time for the fans, he is a certified BMF. Number 2. Kazushi Sakuraba. The pro wrestler turned MMA fighter Kazushi Sakuraba, also known as the Gracie Hunter, made a name for himself in the early days of Pride by defeating multiple members of the renowned Gracie family. Known for his unorthodox style and catch wrestling background, Sakuraba was a true BMF who never backed down from a challenge. His victories over Royce, Henzo and Ryan Gracie, as well as his epic battles against top tier fighters like Wanderlei Silva and Quinton Rampage Jackson, solidified his legacy as one of the toughest MMA fighters of all time. What made Sakuraba so special and such a BMF was how undersized he was in that era. Naturally built like a welterweight, he never backed down from taking on much bigger light heavyweights and heavyweights of his era. He single-handedly destroyed the Gracies in the early days, tapping out Royler and Henzo and beating Royce and Ryan. To tap out the jiu-jitsu experts the Gracies in the early days was an iconic achievement. He would lose against the much bigger guys like Cro Cop and Wanderlei Silva, but went to war and gave it his all. He would beat Rampage by submission and also Kevin Randleman to add to his amazing legacy. His fight style was amazing and so exciting, and is one of the baddest motherfuckers in MMA history. Number 1. Lee Murray. The title and concept of the BMF is simply the reputation a fighter has, and no MMA fighter embodies a BMF like Lee Murray. Lee Murray, a true BMF with a captivating story, known for his exceptional striking and knockout power, Murray made a name for himself in the UK fight scene, and even had a brief stint in the UFC. What made Murray such a BMF was his reputation within the MMA scene. With his infamous story and brawl where outside a nightclub in London, Murray knocked out at the time light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz. This is disputed by Tito Ortiz, but is an iconic story which adds to his BMF legacy. But what also makes Murray such a BMF is surviving a stabbing in 2005 during a party in London. But what helps get Lee Murray to number 1 is what happened in 2006, which takes the reputation and phrase of BMF to another level. Lee Murray and his gang would be a part of what is now known as the Securitas Depot robbery, which remains one of the most audacious crimes in British history, robbing just shy of 53 million in cash. That's right, cash. Murray was the alleged mastermind of the whole robbery, which makes it even crazier. He would be arrested in Morocco and is in prison now for 25 years. Despite his criminal past, Murray's raw talent and fearlessness inside and outside of the cage, and being crazy enough to rob 53 million, of course he deserves the number 1 spot. The moniker of baddest motherfucker was just a phrase, or a moniker. For Murray, it was a lifestyle, which is why he gets number 1 as the baddest motherfucker in MMA history. Did you enjoy the video? Let us know down in the comments below. Who did I miss out on the list? Because I know I missed out a lot of MMA fighters. So leave your top 10 BMFs of MMA history down in the comments below. And who do you think wins the big BMF fight between Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier? Put that down in the comments below. Leave a like if you've enjoyed the video and subscribe for more MMA and fight content coming soon. We hope you enjoyed the video and we'll catch you in the next one.